All right, here we are, episode 30 of the Everyday Bow Hunter Podcast. Once again,
30,
yeah. So cracking a beer, yeah. Right. Once again, I'm here with my brother Dan Zemer. I'm Mike Manley, and man, it's been a big gap since our last podcast. I feel like it's a broken record. We keep saying this, but we literally hunted our asses off.
Yeah.
We hunted our asses off. And every time that we thought we'd have an opportunity to do the podcast, we literally were just either too wiped out with too limited time, or the last time we got bogged down in a buck.
Yeah.
And doing some tracking and stuff. We have a huge story about a buck who was down. One of the biggest bucks that we've gotten at the camp in a while.
Yeah.
And we're going to save that for the end of the show, but we're going to talk you through our week of hunting and then the final weekend of archery that we went through and the ups and downs of archery season here for us. And it has been a lot of ups and downs.
Yeah, it was, I don't want to use the word anticlimactic because it kind of ended on a high, but the week long was a real struggle because we put a lot of time in, didn't really start kind of figuring out the pattern until it was too late. And so with that, what we realized towards the end of the week was up in our area, it was extremely dry, and all these deer, they were kind of really starting to roam, not chase, but roam within that time. But what was happening is they were roaming closer to water, where we were hunting all of our traditional spots. And for me, I went days and days and days and days and days of not seeing a deer at all, which is very discouraging. But that's hunting, and that's hunting our area. And, you know, I used to get real disappointed and dejected, and that I didn't let it get to me this year. And then the very last day of that week long, I got myself into a good situation. Unfortunately, it was a lot of non-shooters. I had a spike come up, a real big spike, a 4-point. If it would have had brow tines, it was a big 4. If it would have had brow tines, he probably could have got shooting at it. I mean, had turkeys coming in behind me, turn around to get positioned on turkey coming in, because I like to call turkey call. I'm a ground hunter, so unfortunately with that, I moving my feet and stuff like that, I will make some noise. So when I do that, I turkey call to kind of counter that and make, deer or whatever think that it's just a turkey over there making some noise, So with that, I hear coming from behind me. I hear them coming in the leaves, and I'm like, oh man. So I turn and I get set up, and just as I'm like kind of positioned, waiting for them to break over this little knob there.
This is archery turkey season that's open. Actually, it's turkey season, fall turkey.
Turkey open.
But it's covered. It's
overlapped.
Overlapped with archery season. Yeah.
So just as I'm like, oh, you know what? This ain't the greatest position. Just as I kind of move like that to position myself a little bit better, I hear behind me, and a doe walked in behind me as this was all taking place. And I was like, well, there went my meat run. But hey, it is what it is. It was a great experience, a real cold morning. It kind of had all the makings, it was idealistic. It was picture perfect. But yeah, for the most part, my week was, it sucked. You know what I mean? Did have one cool moment where me and Mike take our e-bikes and we're way up on top of this false top mountain. And I was like, hey, I'm going to go down, grab some lunch, coffee, and, maybe take a nap. All right, I'll meet you down at the car. So we do. I'm sitting in my truck, and I kind of doze off for about 45 minutes, and I wake up and just kind of collecting my thoughts. I'm just sitting there looking right out in front of me. It goes up the mountain. And I'm looking, I'm like, holy crap, there's a whole flock of turkey, and it was about 10 of them. And they're feeding across the mountain, the edge of the mountain there. And I look over, there's my e-bike, my pack, my turkey call, my bow's behind me in the seat, and I'm like, I'm dead in the water here. I can't move, and I'm like, they come around, and there's right to my left is the road with the gate where it goes up the mountain where we take the e-bikes back up to where we're going. Don't these turkeys come down and boom, down on the road, cross it. And as that's happening, I look to my left, and here comes a racker running the opposite way, and they kind of cross paths, and this thing just takes off, follows the ridge of the mountain, the low side of the mountain out around the horn of it. And I go over and I kind of knock on Mike's car window, and I knock again.
I was racked out.
And I knock again. And I'm like, hey, man, hey.
I was out.
Finally, he wakes up, but he's sitting there like looking at me.
I'm delirious.
Like, he's like, what's happening? And I'm like, wind down your window. And he kind of just like looks at me.
I'm like, what's happening?
Wind down your window.
That was one of those deep sleep moments that you don't normally get in your car.
Yeah, yeah. So he winds down the window. I was like, hey, this all just took place. What's kind of funny, as soon as I got in the vehicle, there's a tree right in front of my truck with a hole in the bottom of it. And a fisher ran into that hole. And I was kind of waiting him out too. But not that I was going to shoot him or anything, but I wanted to see him again. So anyway, make a long story short, I say to Mike, I was like, well, the wind has changed. And it's blowing everything right to where we're going to be hunting. It's probably going to blow up our spot up there. We ought to like kind of change direction. This buck went around this horn. I kind of want to go out in case he comes down to this creek bed that's down there that it all meets to. Mike says, this is a great idea, Dan. Let's do this. So he goes out, heads out to this double power line, and I head out, and ultimately to nothing. But that kind of leads us to... I
saw 2 doe.
You did that evening. Yes, that's right.
I saw 2 doe that evening.
But so... I went back up there, another evening, whatever, with you again, and nothing. You had a hell of a good experience.
Which is what I'm going to talk about. Yeah.
So pretty much that's that. I did get to kill something, but we'll save that for the end.
Yes. Dan did get a kill shot. So anyway, we'll talk about that here in a little bit. Anyway, so for me, I actually had a season not too different than last season. I put myself in a lot of good positions, and it just didn't, pan out the way I wanted to. I had one of the most incredible experiences, and I'll tell you, it
frustrating.
Oh my God, it's the most unbelievable thing. Extremely frustrating. But anyway, I had said, the previous podcast, I wanted to get out and start focusing more on the, that 80-20 scouting, get more scouting in. And I had started that. I went and I scouted. I had a spot, and I found, I had incredible amount of, I had over 20 scrapes. I mean, rubs out to, I don't even know how many rubs it was. There's tons of rubs. And I said, well, either we have a young deer here that's going crazy on his hormones, or we have 2 bucks competing against each other in this area. So I got up and the next morning I went out and hunted the spot, and about 8 o'clock or something, 8:30 maybe, I had came right down to my tree. I did some calling, came right to me, and it was a 4-point. It came out wide, very wide, big bodied deer. Probably was like a 4-year-old deer. It's just how the gene pool is up there.
Yeah, they don't get great headgear up there for the most part.
It's just 4 points, but no brow tines. And ironically, so I come down. This thing goes away from me, and it does a scrape. It does another rub, and it's going down. I can hear it rubbing trees like wildfire. This thing is all worked up. And then my dad and our buddy Jevon's coming back from a hunt they were doing, and Dan is actually down on the other side of the road below me on the mountain, not too far away. And I think at one point, every single one of us saw that buck. Yeah, he was making his way around. I had 2 different instances where I scouted my way in, and then I had a damn spike buck come into me.
I didn't actually see him.
Oh, you didn't? I thought you saw him.
No. So when they were coming down the road, okay, where I was hunting, it's on the point of where this mountain comes to a point, but it rolls back around. It's like this weird horseshoe situation. I was hunting there, and I was like, you know what? I'm kind of going to spot stalk, do a little bit of that, like what we were talking about, what you did a lot of this season. So I kind of walked around that horn of the horseshoe there, and I worked my way around and came down to the road, and I saw a bunch of good sign, whatever. And I get back to camp, and Dad and Jevon were like, you didn't see the buck? We just came through there, and right where you were parked, and I was like, holy crap, I saw you guys, a car. I didn't know it was you guys. I heard a car going down the road. Hear that buck jump in front. Well, I must have pushed him.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Then I had another spot. I've been trying to get this buck from last year. He's laying down rubs like you would not believe. I mean, incredible. So he's taking care of small pine trees that are, this big around. He's tearing them apart. So I go into the one spot that I think he's coming in. I have a doe come across in front of me, about 25 yards. I draw. I'm sitting there drawing, and I'm ready to shoot. And all of a sudden, she puts her head down to the ground, and I see two little spikes. And the doe wasn't a doe; it was a boy. So I couldn't take the shot.
Yeah.
So I was like, "Damn it! This is the kind of luck I had."
Yeah.
So, fast forward, I go and I try to hunt that deer again. I go in, I follow his rub line, the freshest, hottest sign I could find. I really felt good about it. But ultimately on that hunt, I didn't see a single thing. But Dan and I really exercised the e-bikes.
Yeah, that was cool.
It was great to get out and do that, trying to figure out the best configuration for
You can
your
get
pack.
Everywhere so fast.
Yeah.
That's what,
I went to a spot that would have taken me an hour and a half to walk.
Yeah.
Easily an hour and a half to walk, maybe even longer. Yeah. And so when the first time Dan and I go up to this top of this mountain area, that's just a old logging roads. It's not it's not like a regular road or anything. And man, is it rocky as hell. But so we go up and we hunt these spots that we had scouted out previously.
Yep.
And I didn't see anything. You saw a ton of scrapes flying up there.
So where I was at, funny enough, I sat there at the spot I wanted to hunt at the edge of the pine, like kind of on the back edge of the pines, if they were coming or going, and it was a little ambush spot, and there was like some deadfall there, and it kind of got tucked in there. And I'm hunting. Finally, I was like, you know what? That's when I said about going down for lunch, and when I saw the turkeys in the racker, I stood up on not what I didn't see in the morning going in with a headlamp. I mean, maybe 15 yards from me, if that. There was a giant scrape, and I was like, oh, I'm in it. Oh, man, I didn't notice that this morning. Now I got to on the bike, and I was kind of just got nosy and walked to the other side of the logging path, right where it goes down over the mountain. There's 40, 50 yards of woods, or like thick stuff, whatever, cutting there. And there was a whole scrape line going up through there.
I still think there's a lot of promise with that.
I absolutely 100%.
So, but anyway, so Dan and I get done that hunt, and I say to Dan, hey, I think you're packing up to go back to the car. I said, I'm going to go down on my Onyx, on my map. I have out in front of where I'm at going up the mountain here off of this old logging trail is an area they logged maybe 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. And it is just dog hair, the thickest saplings. You don't even want to walk through them. You definitely can't hunt in it. You might find a spot and you're going to have to ground hunt because there's no trees to hunt out of in it. It's that thick. And I said, I'm going to go down to where the transition of this is with the hardwoods. And it kind of blended in, the dog hair kind of blended in the hardwoods. But I went to that transition, and I kind of barely was in the woods, and I saw what it looked like right there at that transition. I saw what looked like it had to be a bunch of doe go up through, because it was just a lot of leaves turned over. And we talked about how dry it was. It was so easy to see when something had gone through there like that.
The leaves, yeah.
And so I said, okay, let me just walk in here a little bit and take a look. And I was barely into that, and I'm hitting big rubs, and I hit a big scrape, and I said, you know what, I'm going to back out. I'm going to back out, and then fast forward, we didn't go back in there for 2 days. 2 days, and we go back up and do a evening hunt. So this is where it gets interesting. So I say, I'm going to take my e-bike down past this, because of the way the winds were at the time, right? I was using the wind in my favor, and I was going to scout in against the wind, and then hopefully set up off of the trail system I had found when I scouted previously, set myself up downwind from that. So anyway, as dry as it is so freaking loud.
Crunch.
That I cached my bike, because in case anybody, which we didn't see anybody up there. Anyway, that's so far up. But anyway, so I have only about 250 yards to go to where I'm thinking I'm in the right spot. It takes me over an hour, maybe an hour and a half, to walk that 250 yards.
Just because staying slow.
I am trying slow and quiet going in there. Because at the top end of this is the mountain kind of goes up behind it is kind of flat in this area. That mountain goes up behind it. I got a transition to my right with that thick dog hair saplings. And I'm thinking it could be bedding right in there.
Yeah.
Right. I was thinking doe bedding, but I'm also thinking, what did we say before? What did you say? Doe adjacent?
Doe adjacent.
Bucks bedding adjacent to doe bedding.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm thinking with this spot. And so I'm creeping in, and all of a sudden, about 30 yards in front of me, downwind and probably into my right, up the mountain, is kind of catty corner to where I was standing.
Right.
A buck stands up. And I'm like, shit, sure enough, he was bedding here. I'm like, shit. So there's not many big trees. And there's one big tree, like just to maybe 5 yards in front of me. I kind of jump over to it. I just push all the leaves out away from me real quick, loud as hell.
Yeah.
So I pull my grunt call up, and I go, bah, bah, bah. And I'm looking over the side of this tree, and the buck starts coming right for me. I'm like, oh shit. So I don't have an arrow knocked. Yes, here's another part of the story. Okay, before I get into
this back today.
Yes. He's holding his release for those listening. So when I had scouted out that one spot where I saw the 4-point, when I was up in there, I had actually heard what I thought was deer coming. So I had knocked an arrow and got my release on, and it was sitting kind of still hunting, right? And nothing ever materialized. So I continued to walk. Well, I have a sling on my bow, and I was holding my bow just against me, and I have a 4-finger release. It was just hanging off my knock loop. And at some point, I knocked it off and I lost it. So bottom line is I lost it. Well, Dan gave me his release. So his is a wrist strap release. I grabbed this release, didn't put the wrist strap. I had no time to put the wrist strap on. I just grabbed it, hooked it onto my knock loop, right? I drew behind the tree, and I think my elbow exposed out to the right of the tree.
You silhouetted
the deer saw the movement. The deer saw it, and he stopped it at like 15 yards. And at that point, I'm calling him maybe a 7-point. He might have been an 8. He might have been a 6. I had the saplings there.
Yeah.
Right? It's tough to see. 15 yards, and he starts stomping his foot. And I'm like, oh, son of a bitch. Come on, man. Come on, man. And so he kind of doesn't trust it then. He kind of jumps back about 20 yards, does a quick couple little hops. And he stops, and he just kind of walks up the mountain. And that was it. So I was like, okay. He never smelled me. He just didn't trust what I was, and he went back to go bed down again, is my assumption. So I set up in a tree there, which I could only get 3 sticks high. It was kind of a whacked out multi-branch tree. I'm up in this whacked out tree, but I'm sitting over this scrape and this set of rubs. At this point, though, my heart had been beating like a freaking freight train
for 20 minutes.
With this deer, right? And I went over 5 yards to my tree, and it took a piss. And there's a reason why I add that into the story, right? So, okay, fast forward. It's 5:15 now. At that time, it had been like, I don't know, 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
So I hunted that whole time, never say anything again. I'm dejected and saying, damn, I missed my shot with that deer. And
timing.
So anyway, so Dan texted me. We actually had coverage up there, which
is crazy.
Was crazy as far back as we were with that. We actually had coverage on our cell phones. So he texts me and says, hey, I'm packing up. I've had enough. Right. And I was sitting there and I said, yeah, I still got probably 10 minutes I could hunt, but you know what? Screw it.
I was getting thirsty.
I'm packing up too. Screw it. So I lower my bow to the ground. I get everything off this. The last thing I have to do is basically unhook my saddle from the tether and pack my tether up and start climbing down the tree. And all of a sudden, as dry as it was, what do I hear? And I was like, you gotta be freaking kidding me. You gotta be kidding me. Sure enough, and this is where also, I don't know if it's a lesson learned or what do you want to call it, but I habitually just drop my bow rope to the ground with the bow. After the bow's on the ground, I just drop the bow rope because I'm going down anyway, right? And so I don't know if I could have pulled the bow up anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But the deer comes in, the buck comes in, it's the same buck, and he comes in and he goes right to the damn spot where I took a piss. He puts his nose in it and he paws at it and stuff, 5 yards. And then he goes to 10 yards and he's just kind of milling around. He's broadside to me. And he's just standing there broadside.
At that point, you're just a wildlife photographer.
I pulled my phone out and I'm recording him. You know,
you're no longer a hunter.
I'm recording him with my phone, and so he goes down, he turns around, comes back, and he's now broadside the other way in front of me, while I'm sitting there with my bow on the ground, and all I can do is do video with my phone, which that is so low light, all you can do is hear him and stuff.
Yeah.
And then he goes over at 30 yards, starts scraping, and he does a rub, and I can't get out of the tree at this point, right? So I'm saying now it's fully dark, and I'm like, I text you, but you think you were riding your bike or whatever.
Right.
Down to this.
And at that point, I got out of service.
Yeah.
So I was just down there.
Yeah. Once you get down to the cars, there's no service there. So anyway, here I am, and I can't get out of the tree. And I'm like, I don't want to burn this spot. He didn't smell me, obviously. He's right there in front of me, 5 and 10 yards. He never saw, I'm literally moving around, taking video of him. But I'm at this point, I want to make sure that I can get out of there quietly and not burn him. So whether or not I did that or not, I don't know, because I waited him out, but he was just going slow. I couldn't, after he had done the scrapes and everything else, I literally couldn't hear him. And it's amazing how quiet deer can be, and even such a noisy environment like that. They walk so softly.
Yeah, they kind of sneak right up on you. It's amazing.
So anyway, I went back in there, hunted again, didn't see a thing. And it was just, I felt like I blew my chance for the season. Like that was the time, that was the spot.
The one.
It was right there. I had every opportunity. Basically, he's sitting in front of me laughing at me. And it was, I got back to camp. I think I wanted to soak my head in cold water.
He was out there and he was like doing the Vogue. He's like, taking a picture of me here.
Yeah.
Take a picture of me here.
Yeah, that was so frustrating. Yeah,
that's one of those. I don't know if it is a lesson learned, but Alex was talking about that too. That it changed him. That now when he climbs or goes, he has his bow on him, somehow attached to him. And it's like,
well, you know what I was doing before, and our dad kind of gave me hell for it. Is I was habitually hooking my bow to my backpack, and then climbing up and down the tree with the bow on my backpack, versus using a bow rope. And my dad had said, hey, I think that's dangerous. I'd heard about guys falling out of trees, having their bow in the back like that, and then it injuring them because they had the bow on them like that. He said, please don't do it anymore. So I said, you know what? It was a safety thing. I'm going to go back to the bow rope. So I did. But like I said, I don't know if that would have helped me, because I'd have had to move a lot to get it off my back if I had the backpack on. There's all a bunch of when you think about how much you have to move to do that, even if I had the bow attached to me, bringing that bow up with the deer standing in front of me 5 and 10 yards, I don't think would have happened. So, but anyway, very frustrating. But okay, now fast forward, we pretty much end the week on that note.
Yeah.
Right. I went through my 55th birthday without anything.
Yeah, it's odd.
Yeah, it was odd. Usually it's very successful on my birthday.
Yeah.
But anywho, so now we get into the
following week.
The following week, we're in the last day, and we have an unbelievable series of events.
Right.
Now, if we want to go backwards, a couple days prior to this, earlier, or maybe it was the week prior. Was it the week prior? Our buddy Jevin had an encounter with the buck that you saw.
The buck that I saw. Yes. It was a real heavy-headed rack. The rack on this thing's real. Like this thing was old and his neck was rutted out. He was wide, heavy. Tines weren't real long, but real white. Thick antlers. And Jevin had an experience with him, and then
which didn't work out.
And then you fast forward to the Saturday morning, Saturday morning.
Now he's hunting off of this. This is kind of a edge of a old clear cut too, and it's at a good transition
with saplings,
and stuff. Kind of the same kind of environment.
Yeah,
and it's near water.
Yes,
and it's near water. and he set up on this. And he said he was frustrated because he had some other hunters come in and park their car real close to where he was at, and he thought they were going to come in on him, but they did not.
They did not.
And turn around right as it got light, 6:30, I think he said. He has this buck coming into him.
Yep. And he shoots, and he hits it real low. So essentially, and back. So he hit it in the guts, and then this thing must have laid down immediately, right in front of him.
He said it was like,
it got up.
Maybe, 30, 40 yards or something like that. It laid down. Got
up, took a couple steps, laid back down. Got up, went maybe 5 or 6 yards, laid down. He said, he waited there for 3 hours. 3 hours. And the thing never moved its head. He thought it was dead. So he's started yelling at it. Hey, hey, hey. Yeah. So he got down out of his tree stand, packed it up, went to walk over to it, and the thing stood up and started walking. It must have jogged a little bit and then started walking. And then he started walking behind it. Now, this thing's pretty much, we'll call it fatally wounded, because a deer is not going to let you just walk behind it 20 yards, 15 yards, 20 yards behind it.
Yeah.
So he starts trailing this thing. He's in all these saplings and stuff, can't get
a shot, the
right shot. And my thought process was shoot it up through the butthole, man. If that's the only shot, you're going to hit all the good stuff on the way out.
Which ultimately he ended up taking a shot.
He did take a shot. And he tried to parallel the thing, and right as he did, the thing wanted to turn and run, and he shot, didn't know where he hit it. But when we finally, at the end of it, we saw the arrow must have nicked its ear and hit across the top of its back.
Did not hit his spine, though.
It was definitely not a fatal shot.
It took part of his ear off, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, we were like, is that a fighting wound? No. Oh, we figured out trajectory of arrow, So.
But he had followed it for 150 yards.
Right.
And then had lost kind of contact with it and didn't know if it had gone back after he took that shot. And he said he lost contact with it at this point.
He lost sight of it. So
he said the best thing to do at this point, instead of chasing this deer around, was to back out.
So he comes back to camp, and he looks pretty dejected. And he tells me this whole story, and I was like, all right, well, you're going to have to tell us again when everybody gets back, so we could all put our heads together. All the information that you could possibly think of. And I said, we got Mark, 70 years old, whatever, Dad, 70, all these guys that put their time in. Let's get everybody's head together, and then we'll think about what to do. So at the end of it, it was, let's sit here and eat lunch. Let's go out and look for him, see what we can come up with, kick it. And if we kick him up again, we'll back out again, come back tomorrow morning, because it's supposed to be pretty cold tonight.
And the reason we went out as opposed to just waiting more hours at that point was because of how Jevin had said he continued to go down.
Yes.
He continued to go down to ground and basically let him fall behind it.
So the 12-hour gut shot window we thought might have been a shorter window, to find out that it definitely wasn't. And he needed all 12 hours, but if not longer.
Yeah.
So we go out in 2 different vehicles, and we split up. Jevin, my dad, and our cousin Mark, they went in where Jevin went in, and so they could follow the shot process.
And go through the blood trail.
I had an idea of where this thing headed, and I said to Mike and Alex, I said,
I think we had a pretty good idea. Yeah.
We're going to go down park. I said, well, we're going to follow. I said, Mike, you follow the creek bed. Alex says, I'll get up on that side of the ridge and I'll follow. I said, okay, I'm going to get up here and look at all this deadfall.
It's a good little draw there where the mountain comes down and it comes into a stream bed and then kind of goes up on a flat.
Yes.
And so Alex was up on the higher end. I was basically in the stream bed.
And I was on the flat.
Dan was on the flat.
So the idea was to meet in the middle, and, Dad and all them, they're walking in. We're walking in. I wasn't even in the woods 100 yards.
It was 100 yards.
And I look over at this deadfall, and I see his head sticking up. I see the rack, and I was like, I hollered over to Mike quick. I watched him for a second or two just to see how he was reacting. And at first I thought he was dead, but his head was up. Like he might have just died in that position. And when I yelled over to Mike, he's over here. I seen him blinking and his ear move like he was listening. And I was like, okay, well, he's in bad shape.
But he kind of stayed like that. It was hard to tell at first if he was dead or not. It was because he was sitting there, he was with his eyes closed, head kind of tilted down, laying on the ground, tucked against this brush pile.
Yeah. Well, when you come over and I was like, hey, easy,
and I was probably 20 yards from him, man.
And I pointed out where he was at so Mike could kind of film him a little bit. And then our cousin Alex comes up to me and he's like, oh, Danny, he's dead. And I'm like, he's not. I watched him blink and I saw his ear move. And I seen his head move, when Mike came up and stuff like that. He's like, no, dude, he's dead. And he looks over at the deer just as he does that. The deer's head moves like that. And he goes, oh, he's still alive. So
I actually took video of all of
that. At that point, Dad and them they're still coming in. We didn't want to kick him up. Even with all the commotion that we had just created there, hollering over to each other. Everybody kind of took their time walking real gently. But anyway, so I finally call off the dogs with those guys. I was like, back out, back out, back out. They do. They finally hear me after a little bit of
yelling in the woods, and the deer's just sitting there like nothing. I'm thinking there's no way this deer's moving. He's going to die right there. But,
so Jevin, I guess there was a little bit miscommunication. Jevin said, we thought he brought his bow. None of us did. And the reason why is Jevin was out of broadheads. So I throw my keys over to Alex. I was like, hop in my truck, go get my bow. I throw my keys over.
Which is a 20-minute ride back to camp to do it.
He does. I said, my crossbow's just sitting right in the porch. Go ahead and grab it. So everybody kind of convenes to where we had originally parked, and they're just hanging out there, whatever, just kind of waiting this scenario out. Finally, Alex shows up. I meet him over at the truck. I grab my bow, load it up, and we go in. And
I had basically been sitting at that point. I had moved. I was about 40 yards from him, and he had gotten. And you were still there when he stood up. So
when he moved the first time,
right? So he ended up
2 times.
He ended up getting up and down about 5 times,
right,
at that spot. But he never went more than a couple yards.
He stayed at that deadfall brush pile.
So what he did was he's in front of us, and I'm like, the wind's blowing our scent right into him. So any kind of faculty he has whatsoever, he can smell the hell out of us. He knows we're there. It's not like he doesn't.
We're standing right
there.
He's
right there. Yeah. And so he stands up, and you can see he's just, at that point, Dan and I could see the exit wound.
Yeah.
Where he was gut shot.
It was, to say the least, it was one of the worst experiences to watch this guy suffer.
If you ever hear this, if you hear somebody say, okay, I think I got shot a deer, we're going to back out for 12 hours. And you go back in, you find them, you all celebrate, everything's good.
But you don't have to witness that 12-hour part,
We witnessed, and I actually got on video, this deer suffering. And he was leaning his head back. He was trying to lick his back, and I didn't know why he was constantly trying to lick his back, and it's because he had that wound on the top of his back. And he was just suffering. His head's going back and forth. He gets up, he's standing there with his head down, and he's struggling. He goes a couple yards, he goes down, and a little while passes, and he does the same thing, gets up. He's basically trying to get away from us, but he goes to the back edge of this brush pile, and he really tucks himself in.
Dug in.
He tucks himself into this brush pile.
To say the least, reliving this is not the greatest experience because it was hard to watch that guy suffer. It affected me. I got choked up at one point because again, maybe I have too much empathy or whatever, but I really respect these animals a lot, and I really think they're precious. And the idea is to do the most humane thing and a great, perfect shot, and they're going to die fast, and that's what you want at the end of the day. But that didn't play out like this. It is what it is. Okay, so this happens in archery season. We all know this.
Yeah, this is the bad side of archery.
This is the ugly side of archery.
This is where shot placement, taking your time. If you don't have the shot, don't take it. Comes into play. I think we talked this through over and over again, out there. But we, like Dan said, he got his Raven. Mark had his 10-point crossbow.
We all kind of
circled around this brush pile and got in the back of it. And like I said, I had my camera on the whole time. Mm-hmm. And we had gone around, and that's when we saw that he was still alive, and he basically is laying there tucked into this brush pile.
Yes.
And that's when Dan came around.
I waited no time at all. Like I literally, I know Mike kind of probably wanted Mark to be able to shoot because of camera angle stuff. I had
ultimately in the big scheme of things, that's not.
I had enough of this deer suffering, and it was time to put him out. And we owed him that. Yeah. We sat there and watched him die for an hour and a half. So as soon as I saw, I only had like a window like that to shoot through, but them ravens are freaking incredible accurate. So I just pulled up and shot real quick, the perfect shot right up through him, and he died.
What's amazing for this, Dan?
Within a minute.
He died fast then, which is good. The thing that's amazing, and I had never seen outside of a YouTube video, is when Dan basically double lunged him.
One lung up through and heart.
Heart. Yeah. And we could sit there, it's so close that we could sit there and watch
his last 3 breaths.
The steam
come out of the
from his lungs come out of his body when he
his last 3 breaths. It was like
three
it was
puffs.
like
It was.
And that was it.
It was amazing to see. It's not, for the faint of heart for sure.
Right.
But it was amazing to see nonetheless.
Yeah, it was like because it was cold out, his lung air was warm, but it was being forced out because of it was like death breaths. Yes. You know what I mean? Like his last. Yeah.
Ultimately, Jevin then had himself one hell of a buck because he is probably one of the wider, bigger 8 points that we've gotten up at that camp in those mountains.
Beautiful. Hell of a nice buck.
Beautiful deer. And ultimately, so I'd taken pictures of, because they had, my dad had worked on cleaning him off to do help Jevin do a Euro mount. Take a picture of his jaw and his teeth. And I showed that to my son, who pulled it up and said that deer, at first he thought it was like 6, but he said that deer is 5 years old. And I said, well, at a minimum, based on the stuff, because my son Trevor is in wildlife management, is going through classes on aging deer, and actually has a chart and stuff, and actually referred us to a deer association YouTube video age, and so that deer could have been 5 years old. Right. Have to see the jawline closer and do a better check, but at a minimum he was 4 years old. Yeah. So a nice mature buck. Yeah. For a mountain buck, they don't make it that long.
He was really nice and wide and like nice tall tines on. Hell of a nice buck.
Yeah.
I mean, what's crazy is we all started talking about this. Is it like, the racker that I had seen that Jevin had the encounter with, his neck was all blowed out. He was in full blown rut.
This deer was not.
This deer was cruising. Now, which brings me to a point that I kind of wanted to discuss, and theory goes for archery hunting. Maybe this doesn't go well for rifle hunting because it's easier, But when a deer is chasing, you're not going to stop him. You can like grunt. You can do you got to like yell at them to get them to stop, and sometimes that doesn't even work. I've actually tried already. Hey, like that. He just kept on going. One thing on his mind, fellas. We all know what that's all about.
I had him stop for me in the rut.
So it's going to be easier if they're cruising. So what I'm getting at is in archery, that fine window, it's a couple days so first they cruise, then once they get on a doe, they're chasing. Okay. So that cruising time, you can stop them on a dime. Out Bedford, that 8 point out there, he was cruising. He came down. The 8 point that I actually killed, 2 seasons ago now, he was cruising. It's easier. I feel archery, it's easier when they're cruising versus chasing.
Now, to your point, when I killed that one buck, he was chasing those doe. He was coming up. He was down. He looked like he was whooped. He was nose to the ground, huffing. He looked tired, and he was when I did that. He didn't stop at first, and I went that real loud, and he stopped, and that's when I shot him. But that other one that was cruising the one time, I think I didn't even do anything. He stopped on his own. I didn't have to worry about it.
Yeah, so. Cruising is not, they're not on that hot estrus. You know what I mean? So it's different. They're just kind of, again, they're cruising around looking for doe, looking for the hot sign. Their hot sign is a little different than our hot sign. Yeah. Kind of the same.
So a very dry, up until that was the last day we were hunting, except for we did hunt Sunday. We had Sunday hunting in PA. Yeah. We hunted Sunday morning. Oh, you didn't hunt Sunday morning?
Nope.
Jevin didn't hunt Sunday morning. We had a couple people hunt.
He was out of broadheads.
So, yeah. So another thing, that last Sunday, I'm hunting and before it gets light, I have a buck come, then 25, 30 yards of me while it's still dark, of course. And he didn't seem like he was chasing or anything. He just was kind of like doing his normal morning routine kind of deal. But so we were kind of telling ourselves that in Pennsylvania, we've experienced this last year too. It used to be that first week of November was your high rut activity time, but it seems to have shifted in PA
and pushed out
into that second week of November more so.
Right, going into bear season almost.
Yeah, and even then, like you said, that buck he got on that this past Saturday was
he wasn't
he wasn't swollen up.
No,
and his glands there in his legs weren't all tore up.
Right.
Yeah, which is surprising. So. Anyway, that there, gentlemen, ended the mid-season for us on not such a high note.
Yeah.
And we have told ourselves this more than enough times. We like the challenge of the mountains and everything, but we also understand that this low deer density thing can be
taxing on the brain.
Can be tough.
Yeah.
Tough to go.
It wears on you because you go days and days not even seeing like there was 2 days where I was lucky I even saw a squirrel. I'm like, what in the actual hell is going on here? Where are the animals? Like you look around and you just look around and go, I'd live here. Like, where are the animals?
I'd live here. Yeah. I mean, I do have to say that I put myself in the positions that I wanted to be in, but I didn't, I saw the deer that I saw, I was doing the right things. And it just, even then in the mountains, because of how tough it can be and how that deer density is, if you missed your chance like I did with that buck, that might be your only chance. So
like there was times where I caught myself sitting out there thinking to myself, dude, we gotta find a new hunting spot, man. We gotta find where the deer, like a higher deer density area to hunt. But then again, this goes back to when you finally do get a deer, the reward is so much great. Broken record again. Until you've experienced it, you wouldn't understand. When you finally do get a nice buck up there, there's no feeling on the planet like it. The success is just like,
I'll tell you the one thing.
Awesome.
The one thing about this season, I got to test a hell of a lot of gear.
Yeah.
I've got a pile of stuff over here to my left that's unbelievable how much stuff I tested this season. Yeah. But anyway, guys, I mean, we laid it all out here.
Yeah.
This is the one thing I don't think said in the beginning is episode 30 of the podcast.
No, we did because I cracked a beer for it.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll do it again.
Things are getting ugly here, guys.
No. So here we are. We're a couple days, 4 days out from Thanksgiving, and then rifle season starts. So next week. Yeah. Next Friday or Saturday. Mm-hmm. So it ain't going to be, it'll be the everyday rifle hunter instead of for a couple weeks here, but yeah.
I really don't hunt the rifle. I don't plan on going out to that very last day of rifle.
So every year
I'll go out in late season archery, but I'm not going to do much rifle hunting.
The final day we meet up, of rifle season
in Pennsylvania,
we meet up with friends of the family and different guys from different cabins in the area. And we have this party, and it kind of traditionally for the longest time, it just shifted. One year we'd host it, next year they'd host it, next year, etc. So last year it was at this new place, and it's freaking great, nice big garage, and they're holding it again this year. So I'm looking forward to it. That party is the culmination of a season. Yeah. It's like we say about at the end of an episode, we say, all right, you ready to put a bow on it? So that puts a bow on that. Late season in PA is a little rough.
It's rough.
Yeah. I mean, you either got a foot of snow or it's 7 degrees. That's tough to sit still and hunt in. It really is. Hey, kudos to the guys that do it.
Hey, you got a heated vest now. I don't want to hear it.
That I do. Tie-wee.
Yes, and I have a heated jacket. So anyway, pretty good episode there, Dan.
Yes, sir.
Yep. Sorry it took us so long to get back to you guys. If you have any questions, put them in the comments on YouTube. Go on Instagram, send us stuff. I've been getting a ton of questions. I've been asking, being asked a ton of stuff about gear that I don't want to weigh down in this podcast, but maybe we'll hit up on it on the next. So anyway, guys,
cheers.
We're putting a bow on it.
Here's the
episode 30. Yep. And we will see you next time. Hey, this is Mike once again. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you want even more content from the Everyday Bow Hunter, I invite you to go over to everydaybowhunter.com or archeryhunting.com. It's the same website for the Everyday Bow Hunter. In addition, if you haven't subscribed, go to our YouTube channel. We have a lot more than the podcast there. Got more video coming every day, a lot more content. In addition, if you go over on your podcast channels, or you're already there, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever, please give us a 5-star review. Give us a follow. We really appreciate it. In addition, if you see an Everyday Bow Hunter shirt like this, go ahead, go to the website, go to YouTube, click on it, buy one of our shirts. Every little bit helps. We're not sponsored by anybody. In addition, in our descriptions and our show notes, we highlight products that we use and buy that we love. Now, every time you click on one of those links, we get a small commission. It really helps us out. Like I said, we're not sponsored by anyone. You're our sponsor. So with your support, we can make this channel even better. I appreciate it. And until then, I will see you next time.